Hello, LinkedIn friends. I am so happy to have you here today. I am with my friend, Laura Gassner Otting. Laura is a wonderful author. She's the author of the new book, Limitless. And we are going to be talking today about overnight success. What that means, what that looks like, and in fact, of course, as we know, why that's not a thing, but it might look like a thing. So I'm very excited for the chat. How's it going, Laura?
Oh, well, it's so easy in the world of overnight success. Everything's great. It's perfect.
Totally. Just kind of bonbons for 3 meals a
Yeah.
day.
I may or may not be wearing pants right now. Who knows? It's just how it works and here in the perfect world.
Totally. And you're coming in from Boston, is that right?
Yes, I am.
Amazing. And I'm in New York City, so greetings. And I'm seeing some hellos coming in from our friends who are here on LinkedIn Live. Type into the chat box, guys. We'd love to see who's here and where you're from. Tell us where you're coming in from. We have a hi from Gabriel. We have Rebecca. We have Kayati. So we've got great folks coming in. We have Cece Min from Myanmar. Welcome. That's exciting. We have Yasir from Pakistan. We are well represented in the East, so I love that. Kirti is from the UK. Hello, guys. So love seeing everybody here. Feel free to just type your hellos and your where you are in your chat box. But so, Laura, I want to start in with a question from you. So your book Limitless came out. How long ago was it? When was the release date?
It was April 2nd of 2019. So it's been out for just over a year.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So we've just passed your 1 year book anniversary.
Yes.
So this book comes out, and what I love about your story, Laura, is so your book comes out, it's your first one, your debut one. You manage to get on Good Morning America. You manage to get on the Today Show, and you get booked for these speeches. I mean, not in the present moment, obviously, but up until COVID, you're being booked for keynote talks, making, literally in the tens of thousands of dollars for these. Now, there's a lot of people, 1 million books come out per year. There's a lot of people who would basically say, how the F did she do that?
Yeah.
And so I would like to explore that further with you, because I think you have a great story to tell about what it really takes. But so walk us back here. Just give us a brief sense. You have not been in the writing, speaking, thought leadership space for that long. Tell us what you did before. What was your arc?
So actually, yesterday was my 5-year anniversary of being in the thought leader, speaker, writer space.
Mazel.
Because thank you. 5 years ago, 2 days ago, I sold my last company to the women who helped me build it. So I thought I was going to run for office. I thought I was going to be the first U.S. female senator from the great state of Florida. That was my plan. And then I got to law school and I looked around and I was like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. This is terrible. It was like organ rejection. And I did the thing that you do when you're in a bad place. You date somebody who's not good for you. But that person, I joke around, had really good taste in precisely two things. The first was obviously girlfriends, but the second was unknown presidential candidates from tiny southern states. And he drove me home from class one day and we stopped off at this guy's local campaign office who was running for president. And there I saw this little video of this guy named Bill Clinton who was telling this, he was giving this impassioned talk about how there's nothing wrong with America that can't be fixed with what's right with America. And he proposed national service, community service in exchange for college tuition. And I was like, yes, I have to do that right now. So I dropped out of law school. I dumped the guy. I started volunteering on the campaign. And the next thing you know, he gets to the White House. And because I'd been on the campaign and I'd been working, I get to the White House. So I have this crazy first job in the White House helping build AmeriCorps. And 4 years into doing that, I wanted to get back on the campaign trail. I was like young and hungry and I was, in it. But I was 25 years old and I went to my boss at the time and I was like, I'm ready. And he looked at me and he's like, no, you're basically too old to get on a campaign bus and eat cold pizza and sleep on high school gymnasium floors. And you're too young to be the domestic policy advisor. So you should go talk to my friend Arnie Miller. He runs the biggest search firm in the country that does specifically nonprofit work. You'll hide out there for 4 years and then you'll come back and do something really big for Al Gore. And I was like, that sounds like a great plan. So I sat down with Arnie and 5 minutes into the call, I was like, you work out of Boston, and the guy I'm dating now, who was a much better guy, who, by the way, I've been married to for almost 25 years, he's about to move to Boston. I should come work for you." And he's like, "You should." And I said, "Great. What do you do?" And so I became a headhunter, and I
I
worked.
just want to interrupt for a second. Fun fact, Laura, I worked with Arnie Miller's son
Oh,
on the Howard Dean campaign.
oh,
So
Michael. Yes, yes,
yes,
yes.
yes,
He
exactly.
just graduated from the Kennedy School. He just came back and graduated from the Kennedy School. So great, great guy. Um, so 4 or 5 years into doing that and learning from the best and the brightest about how to do this work really well, I had this moment of rage that most entrepreneurs have when you're like, I can do this better and smarter and probably with more profit and maybe more authenticity and more integrity and better for the clients and actually better for me. And why don't we do this work differently? And I marched into Arnie's office and I'm like, "Here's the way." And he was like, "There's the door." So he offered me a chance to stay. But once you realize that you're not part of the solution, it leaves you only in one place, which is that you're part of the problem. So I left and I founded my own firm, and then I ran and I grew that for 15 years. So the book and the speaking and the thought leadership that I'm doing now really comes out of 20 years of interviewing thousands of people that were in these massive moments of career shift and career change and life reinvention, and understanding why they weren't happy where they were and how they would define happiness with where they wanted to go.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. So for 20 years you're doing headhunting
Yes.
in largely or entirely in the nonprofit space, is that right?
Entirely for nonprofits, universities, advocacy organizations, and we did some socially conscious businesses, some socially responsible businesses as well.
Got it. So why after 20 years did you decide, okay, enough of this, I want to do something else. I want to share my wisdom more broadly, you could say.
Well, I didn't actually decide that I wanted to share my wisdom more broadly. I At the 10-year mark of running my own company, I was actually in an elevator on my way up to like the 180th floor of some like fancy building in Manhattan to go talk to a captain of industry, right? Like a Gordon Gecko type whose desk was bigger than, my entire house. And he had like 15 people all around it and looked over Central Park. And he was like, "This is what I want to do with my family foundation." And I was in the elevator on the way up realizing that I hadn't done any research at all because I'd done 6 other searches just like this, and I figured I knew what was going on. And so I this is kind of an embarrassing story actually, because I was basically committing malpractice at this point. I pick up my phone and I Google the guy, and I can't really find much on him except for the fact that he has a lot of really fancy houses, and he has outdoor pools and outdoor ice skating rinks at each of them. Okay, even the one in the Bahamas, right? So, and it's all about how he's super private. So I go into his office and he stands up, and the whole time he works in financial trading, and the whole time his head of HR is telling me in the elevator on the way up, "It's the middle of trading hours. It's really busy. He's probably not going to pay that much attention to you. Don't feel bad if he like stares at a screen." And I was like, "Okay, fine." So we go in and he sits me down and he says, "Okay, here's the thing. I'm getting a little older. I should probably give some money to some local hospital so I can get better treatment. And my kids are getting a little older, so I should probably give some money to some colleges to help get them in." And I just stood up and I said, "Well, sir, it has been lovely to meet you, but you don't need me to find you a head of a family foundation to do that. You have 15 lawyers right outside the store that can write those checks for you. So thank you very much. It's been wonderful. Have a good day." I take back my proposal for this work. And everybody in his office was like, "Oh," because nobody had ever said no to this guy before. So of course, he looks at me and he's like, "Well, what would you do?" And I said, "Well, based on the deep research that my firm has done, we have determined that you are exceptionally private, but also you care deeply about your children's sports. So I don't think that you should give a huge gift to a hospital or college to put your name on the wall because you don't want that. If you care that deeply about, your children's sports, and I know that they play a lot of ice hockey, like we're not giving money to the environment, clearly. Ice hockey. What if, for example, you created a partnership between your local university and your local hospital to create the world's foremost research project on childhood concussions?" And he was like, "Well, that's a great idea. Go find me somebody to do that." And I'm like, "How about I find you somebody who's going to spend more than 15 minutes to help you actually come up with a strategy and a legacy. And I'll find you somebody who can help build that. And he was like, well, okay. And on the elevator down, on the way down, I turned to my business partner. I'm like, I need an exit strategy because that was malpractice. Like I was able to pull that out of my ear because I had been doing the work for 15 years, but I that wasn't okay, right? Like I was at a point where I was like, I'm not, it's not that I'm sick of pitching, I'm sick of winning. Like I knew how to do it. I'd solved there's a fine, like every client comes to you in a consulting firm and says, we have a super unique problem. And the answer isn't, no, you don't. It's unique to you, but luckily it's not unique to me. I've seen it before. And so I got to that point. I'm like, I've seen it before. So I knew that the exit would take some time. And I said, look, let's create an exit strategy. It'll be a 5-year strategy. At that point, the firm will be 15 years old. I will have been doing search for 20 years. I will be 45. Seems like good numbers. And she was like, ugh, okay. And then we went through all the cycles of grief to like do an exit of that. And I sold it. And then when I did, I had this like identity crisis. Like, who am I when I'm no longer LGO CEO? Here's my business card. And I was chairing an art auction for our local AIDS action organization. And I got introduced by a friend of mine on stage who was like, this is, Janet Wu from Channel 7. She introduces me and she says, this is my dear friend, Laura. She dedicates her life to philanthropy. And I didn't know if I wanted to stick my cocktail fork in my eyes or her eyes, because I was like, yeah, it's true, but that's not the whole story. And so I went home and I started blogging. And then our dear friend Tamsin Webster read one of the blogs and said, you should do that as a TED Talk. And I was like, no way. That is terrifying. I have no interest. I do not want to be a public speaker. I will crap my pants if I get on stage. And my then 15-year-old heard me take the call on speakerphone and was like, so mom, don't you tell me I always have to do scary things, and don't you tell me life starts on the other side of the fear, and don't you always tell me that it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you.
Leave it to the 15-year-old.
I mean, like, that's what he chooses to listen to of all the things that I've told him in my, like that. And he throws it back in my face. And 6 weeks later, I'm on the stage at the Boston Opera House with gold guild walls and crystal chandeliers and 3 mezzanines. And I think I might die. So I did the talk, and then that talk got some attention, which then got me an offer to speak somewhere, which then got me another offer, which got me another offer. The next thing you know, I was like, well, this is a fascinating job where I go in and there's no deliverables afterwards, but I speak and I tell you the things that I know about which I feel deeply passionate, and you hand me a check. I like this job.
It's a pretty good job.
I didn't know this job existed. So yeah, I didn't have a decision where I'm like, I have thoughts that I can lead with and I'm going to share them with people. I sort of fell into it. And then I've really spent the last year since the book came out kind of backfilling, like filling the foundation under the house that I found myself standing in.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, just to sort of reel it back a little bit, Laura, there's a lot of people who will give, a TEDx talk of some kind, and it doesn't, it's great, yay, it's awesome, but it doesn't necessarily lead anywhere. It doesn't necessarily lead to an offer of a talk, much less multiple offers of a talk, much less getting paid for those things. And so I can imagine somebody might hear that and just say, "Wow, she got lucky." Now, certainly, I'm sure, luck plays a role in everything, but there's also methods. There's also the hard work that goes in beforehand. And so I'm hoping you can break it down for us. What do you feel like is the part that wasn't luck? What were you doing on the back end that people wouldn't necessarily see that enabled you to take advantage of the opportunities that you had?
Yeah, well, I worked my ass off. That's what was happening that people didn't see. So just this morning, I literally, just before I got on this call with you, I got a message over Facebook from somebody saying, I read your book and I loved it. And then I ordered it on Audible. And I've been listening to the same chapter. You didn't tell me which chapter, but I'm listening to the same chapter each morning. And it has been the thing that has helped me get out of bed every day, because I've lost my job, I'm getting divorced, life is falling apart. And this has helped me get out of bed. And so I did a lot of hard work, and I want to talk about that. But I think that there is a tendency for people who get maybe asked to do a talk or who try to put themselves out there to be like, I just got to get the bit right. I got to get the joke right. I just got to like, make sure that I get the cold open exactly right. But you know what you got to get right is the message. You got to actually get the thoughts. You got to get the content right. And I think that's the thing where, Scott McKain, our friend Scott McKain calls them people give book reports. You get people that get up on stage and they're just giving book reports of somebody else's ideas when really it's got to be something. It's like, this is a body of information that you're looking at through your own unique lens, that you're putting your own unique spin on, that you are presenting to somebody with your own unique framework so that they can actually take it and act upon it in a way that they haven't been able to before. And I think that's the piece that, I tell people it took me 6 weeks to write Limitless, but it took me 25 years and 6 weeks to come up with Limitless. So let's talk about the work, but I didn't want to talk about the work without saying that you can do all the work in the world, but if you don't have the content, I mean, you talk about this in your course so beautifully, right? Like you have to actually have the idea, you have to have the stuff. And then from there, it's, the network and, all of the rest of what you need to build. So I had the idea, I had the thing, and then I did a ton of work. I took your course. I remember calling you up and saying, I have the credibility because I have the TEDx and I've been published in, different magazines and, newspapers of merit. And I have, the content, right? Like I got the book, I had the thing. And I had this great network that I've had from being around, just being my age. You get to know a lot of people, but I haven't figured out how to actually use the network and work the network in a way that is smart. So I took your course. I mean, that was one of the huge things that I did that just made me remember that there's a strategy to how you put yourselves in front of someone else. It's about, a lot of people write about themselves. They'll post something about themselves and they'll write about themselves, but really it's like you post yourself, but then you write about the other person. You write it through the reader's lens because they're the ones who are feeling it. I did speaker training. I hired Tamsin with the red thread to help me take that 18-minute or the 12-minute TEDx and make it into a 45-minute talk to make sure that there was enough content and that it was good enough. And then I use that to, write more articles and to tweet and to sort of put it out there in the world so that if somebody was doing searching for it, they would find that and they'd see that I was the expert. I did Michael and Amy's heroic public speaking. I wanted to learn how to own the stage, how to use the stage. And what a lot of that gave me was not just how to do that, but actually how to find myself in it. So you mentioned the Today Show and Good Morning America. They were both great experiences, but they were completely different. So the Today Show, I was on like the week before the book came out.
The book hadn't even come out.
The book
Wow.
hadn't even come out. So, and I hired a publicist, right? I mean, I sold my company for, I actually sold my old company for $1 plus a percentage of revenue for the following 5 years because it was really important to me that I leave it as an institution rather than a cathedral to myself. So I took a big chance. They took a big chance, right? And that's how we sold it. So I had a 5-year runway that I could play with. So I hired a publicist. She sent out press releases. And because Amy Cuddy was the blurb on the front of my book, the producer there was like, Amy Cuddy, I love Amy. What's this book about? And we could talk about the whole blurb thing too, because that's part of it. But on the Today Show, I sat there and I had the conversation and it was like me talking to Hoda and Jenna, and it was lovely and it was wonderful. And they did such a great job taking care of me. But I didn't understand what the book could be at that point. And it was in the 9 o'clock hour, which was the stay-at-home mom hour, is what the producer told me. And I still at that point thought I wrote a business book. How do you, change your career to have a better life? And really it was like, how do you change your life to have a better career? It turns out it was a self-help book. So I was being very polite and I was very muted. I was wearing muted colors. I had, I'm an athlete, so I'm pretty muscular, but I covered up my, my muscles with a longer shirt. I wore soft makeup. It was all very soft. Fast forward 150 podcasts later and a bunch of speeches later, and suddenly there I am on the Today Show, and I'm standing, and it's vibrant, and it's big, and it's loud, and it's in your face. And I don't think I sold a single book on the Today Show, but after Good Morning America, my book went to 121 on all of Amazon. So the work that you put in, people think it's like, I want to do that work because I want to learn how to be a TEDx talker. But the truth is, I can't even look at my TED talk now because I am not me. I'm trying to be someone else. And the work that you put in is actually the work that helps you raise your game, but it actually also helps you find your own personal voice, because that's where the power, the reason why some people strike lightning and some people don't, it's because they're able to be it's like their enthusiasm is contagious around it. And I didn't have contagious enthusiasm on the Today Show because I was being very polite. But on, by the time I got to Good Morning America, I knew who I was and I knew the power of the message, so much so that when the producer said, okay, now Amy, who was interviewing me, you're going to ask the live studio audience, how many of you have ever made a decision where, other people told you it was the right thing? And everyone will raise their hand. And I was like, literally right before we went on, okay, and then I'm going to ask, and how many of you are happy? And the producer was like, that's really dangerous. This is live national TV. And I was like, I got this. Like, I knew. So she asks, every hand goes up. I ask, every hand goes down. And it was like, boom, that was the moment. But it took all that work and all that time and all those podcasts and all that training to find this version of myself.
I love that. That's really powerful, Laura. So I will just share here, if people want to learn more about Laura, you can go to her website, lauragassnerotting.com. You can check out her great stuff there. And if you want to follow my stuff, feel free to go to dorieclark.com. So we want to keep in touch with all of you guys. So Laura, I love all of this, and I want to understand a little bit more. You were talking earlier about the power of your network and how that in many ways was sort of a superpower for you, because the whole premise of being a headhunter really is about building a network.
Right.
So you built this network for 20 years. You, by your own admission, hadn't really, we'll say, operationalized it. How did you start to operationalize it? What did that look like? And what have you learned in the process about how people can leverage their networks effectively? Because I think a lot of people fail because they go to one of two extremes, right? They either move too fast and kind of end up acting like they're exploiting people, or they move too slow and they don't tap anybody and they don't get the help they need. So what did you do?
So the transition for me that was really difficult was going from being the CEO of a company where I was selling the company. I was selling the solutions. I was like, look at my amazing people who were so much better at this work than I am, and you're going to be in good hands with them. And it's so easy to be a champion. And, we used to sell the work by not saying like, it's us against you on the other side of the table, and you're fighting cancer, right? Or childhood poverty or racism or wherever the thing might be. It's us and you together against racism or childhood poverty or, whatever the issues are. Like we didn't feel like I was selling myself. And then suddenly I'm in this place where I'm the product. And that was deeply uncomfortable. So when you sell a book, I didn't know any of this. So when you know this, but just for your listeners, when you sell a book, you have that 6-week pre-sale time, right? So the book comes out on April 2nd. You want to do a pre-sale starting the middle of February, because every sale that you have before the week of the book counts towards lists. And I didn't know that. So the beginning of February rolls around and I've hired this publicist. She's like, great, we need to start the pre-sale. And I was like, what's the pre-sale? It turns out that my birthday is February 15th. So I was like, okay, I guess we'll start it on my birthday. And that'll be the thing I ask for people. Yeah, like, I don't know. So I had a guy who came and helped to put together a speaker reel right when I first started speaking, which, by the way, was like a couple of clips from me at TEDx, a theater that we rented, and like, a bunch of B-roll that we like kind of cobbled together from, it was like the Wizard of Oz, right? Like you don't wait until you're ready. You got to
all the smoke and mirrors,
Like that's part of the, the luck is being able to pretend that you belong on the stage that you haven't yet gotten to. So he came to my house and I'd known him for years. Like I'm totally comfortable with him. He sets up all of his camera equipment, and I try to do this thing where I'm like, hi, I'm Laura Gassner Otting, and I'm the author of Limitless. And please buy my book. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't get the words out of my mouth. I kept stumbling because I was so uncomfortable as the product. And then finally, after 40 takes, he was like, look, just do a goofy one and we'll get it out of your system. And then you'll do a serious take. So I was like, fine. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to me. I like sung happy birthday to myself. And I was like, hi, I just wrote this book and this is the craziest thing ever. But if you buy it right now, it's going to be awesome. And maybe I'll get on a list and I'll be your friend forever. And I'll give you a big juicy kiss. Please tell me you got that. And he was like, yep. And then he starts taking his camera equipment down. And I'm like, wait. No, I have to do the serious one now. And he's like, no. That's the one. Trust me. So what does your network want from you? Your network wants you. Like the reason that I became friends with people who are willing to go to bat for me is because they don't know me as I'm Laura Gassner Otting, the author of Limitless. They know me as like the goofy person who's willing to just be, I'm willing to embarrass myself and I'm fueled with moxie and I'm like, and I when I am myself and I am my most vulnerable and I'm my most open and it's almost like if somebody comes to you and they're super serious with an ask, you're like, okay, then you're weighing whether or not like there's risk, there's reward. Should I do it? Do I want to spend this capital? But if they're just coming to you like as a friend, as a real person, that really helped. And so the hired was like, how did the book launch? She's like, how did you do that? Because every one of our authors wants to know. And I was like, I don't know. I think I just showed up for people for the last 40 years. So they showed up back for me when I asked them and when I explained to them doing this thing right now actually would matter. Like I involved my network in the joy and in the experiment. You don't get any credit like in school and math class for just giving the answer. Like you have to show your work. Like I showed my work all along the way. Like I showed people going to the speaker training and I showed people the here's the half empty decanter of scotch because I just deleted 4,000 words that I wrote yesterday. Like I just involved people along the way. So I think they felt like they were part of the process. And so they wanted to be part of the success as well.
That's really powerful, Laura. I love that. And guys, if you are watching this and you are enjoying the conversation with Laura, please hit the share button on LinkedIn so that your friends can see it and can benefit from the conversation as well, so that we can spread the message further. And again, if you want to learn more about Laura, go to lauragassnerotting.com. You can check out her fantastic stuff. And if you want to learn more about my stuff and find out about future LinkedIn Lives that I'm doing, feel free to go to dorieclark.com. You can sign up for my various self-assessments and you can get on the list to learn about that. So, Laura, I wanted to ask you specifically. We've talked before, and I think it's really interesting. If you can trace it back, I think sometimes people are not sure how these things happen. But I loved the story for you about. So you got on Good Morning America
Yes.
because you spoke at a conference,
yes,
and you leveraged being at that conference in a creative way. But even before you spoke at the conference, maybe let's start at the place of how did you get to speak at that
how did I get to
particular
the conference?
That's right. Yeah. So walk us through that, because I think that's a pretty cool story.
So you and I are part of a group of speakers on Facebook. And when I was first invited into that group, I was so wholly intimidated by all the people that were there. I mean, these are incredible people who are making, $30, $40, $50,000 a talk. And I was like, well, I don't belong here at all. And they're going to figure that out pretty quickly. However, I also knew I had a lot to learn from them. And so I knew that I needed to write my speaker contract. I didn't have a contract. So there was a Dropbox full of anybody who wanted to share full of their contracts. And so I just went through them and I made notes to myself, like, this is what most people do about travel. This is what most people do about filming. This is what most people do about intellectual property, whatever all those things are. And then I shared it to the group. I was like, hey, I needed to make my own contract. So I took notes on all the contracts. And if anybody else in the position, here's, a 15-page document about like what most people do, what some people do. Here's some different ideas. And suddenly people were like, oh, who's this Laura Gassner Otting person? She seems smart. She seems knowledgeable. She seems like she knows what she's doing. She seems like she's giving to the community, right? She's adding into the community. And so I went to the community. I think most people go to communities like that and they think all these people know more than me. I'm just going to sit back quietly and just take and just learn and just not be found out. And what I said was, I'm going to take and I'm going to learn. But every time I take and I learn, I'm going to also add that resource back in. And so I became, part of like, the cool kids in this group because I kept giving back. Like I learned something about book publishing. I learned something about, podcasts. Like I would just share the resources over and over again. And all of us can do that. And so as I did that, I started creating these online friendships with people that I never met before and who I'd be totally scared to actually call in real life. And one of them is our friend Mitch Joel. And Mitch happened to be coming to town to speak at Inbound, and he posted in the group, "Hey, I'm going to be in Boston next week. Anybody around for lunch?" And I was like, "Me?" And he was like, "All right, awesome. How about
And
noon?
you
Where
had
can
not
we go?"
met him in person at that point?
We had never met in person.
Okay.
So we met at the Legal Seafood that's down the street from the convention center. And we met at 12. And then our friends Ian Altman and Michael Barber joined us at 12:30. And Ian and Michael will tell you that by the time they got there at 12:30, they thought that Mitch and I had known each other for a billion years. Like we just like immediately hit it off and clicked. And we were like, we're like brother and sister from like, other parents. And so we just became friends because I gave to the group. And then when he saw me raise my hand, he knew me as a person who was generous and who was, had an abundance mentality. And so we had lunch. So we got to know each other and it was really lovely. And so we kept this friendship going. And then about 4 months later, he sends me a text message and he's like, "Hey, my company is actually sponsoring an event tomorrow that Joe Biden is the head, he's the keynote speaker. And I know that you have a background in politics. What are you doing tomorrow?" I live in Boston. This is in Montreal. And I was like, "Actually, well, nothing. I mean, I have like a couple meetings, but I can move them." And he's like, "Great. These are the flights you should take. You should book them. Come hang out with me and Joe Biden." Now, he just, he goes to a billion of these things. Buying the flight to go to Montreal the next day cost like $120 because it was like last minute and, it's super short flight. And I could have easily said, no, 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 I don't want to do that. I shouldn't spend the money. It seems like, a boondoggle. But I was like, this is a cool opportunity to spend time with a cool person who's doing cool things, right? Like if you do good things with good people, good stuff always seems to come. So we spent the entire day hanging out. We went backstage. We did the little, meet and greet with Joe. And what I didn't know is that Mitch, as the sponsor of this event, could talk into the ear of the guy who runs it and say, "Hey, by the way, Laura has a book coming out in 2 months. You should have her as one of your speakers." So you give to a community, you have abundance mentality, and then people become champions of you and your work. Like it's just that is as simple as it gets. Like there's nothing else that goes on. It is just if you give, other people give, and you have no idea when you're first doing the giving that it's going to come back in these ways, but it does. So he then invites me to speak at his event, and a few things happen. The first is he doesn't pay me to this guy. Scott doesn't pay me to speak at his event, but he flies me out first class, puts me up, beautiful arrangements, all of that. But buys
Just a
five.
quick question, Laura. Sorry.
Yes.
So Scott was the guy that organized the event the event with Joe Biden, which Mitch was a sponsor of, and then he
Yes.
organizes other events, and so
Yes.
he invited you to speak at a subsequent one.
Yes. So
Got it.
so this event was the Art of Leadership, and he also does the Art of Leadership for Women. So the Art of Leadership for Women was a 3-day event in May, the first week of May, and then the third week of May. There were 2 events one week and one event the next week, and they were in Calgary, Toronto, and Vancouver. So he invites me to come speak. He says, "We can't pay you because we've already spent our budget on other speakers." Because when you're first starting out, that's what happens a lot. He goes, but I said, "There's lots of ways that I can be paid. One of them is in book buys," right? So he buys 500 books for each event. And I then buy those books through Barnes and Noble. Because if you buy 500 books through Barnes and Noble, and they also like your book, it's got to be both, they'll put your book in the window of Barnes and Noble in Union Square, on Fifth Ave,
Pro
in
tip.
Copley Place. Like huge pro tip, like figure out where the high traffic places are and then buy it through there. So I didn't make any money. Like it actually cost me some money because I had to buy it through there and ship it to Canada. But all of a sudden my book was in the window of, oh my God, my book's in the window of Barnes and Noble and another one, right? So it gives you all that like momentum. So I go out and I do the first talk. There's 4 speakers. It's me, it's Tasha Eurich, it's Tiffany Bova, Tiffany Dufu, and Malala. Malala, right? So when I find out that it's going to be Malala 2 weeks earlier, I call Michael and Amy Porter, Heroic Public Speaking. I'm like, I need to up my game, like right the hell now. So I did like a whole 1 day private, it cost a ton of money, but I was like, if I want to be doing this and I'm going to have great footage in this room of 2,500 people and Malala, that's going to be worth it. Like, this is an investment. That's marketing money, right? That's an investment because I need to show up. So I do it the first day. And then I do it a couple days later. And each time I'm noticing that they're running like a little behind. So I'm like, oh, I was supposed to speak for 45 minutes. You're 5 minutes over. Do you want me to go 40? And they were like, would you do that? Oh, thank you. That's amazing. So I went 40. The next time, did the same thing. The next week, because Malala has to take finals. She was a senior at Oxford.
Oh, Malala.
Oh, Malala. Robin Roberts was the last speaker. So at that point, I'd already been helpful. I'd already been really easy to work with. I was like, I'm showing up. I'm here. I'm early. I'm not a diva. Like, you're the star. I'm not the star. And I get on stage. I do my talk. I get off stage. I go, sign 300 books in the line. And by the time I get backstage again, Robin is on stage. And I've always adored Robin Roberts. She's like a shero of mine. I mean, she is just, she is such a boundary. She just breaks through boundaries in everything she does. And
And for people who don't know, she's on Good Morning America.
Yeah, she is like one of the top, anchors in the United States and in the world, and one of the head anchors in Good Morning America. And I look at the MC and I was like, oh man, I really wanted to meet Robin. She's like such a hero of mine. And I should also be on Good Morning America. Ha ha ha. So he literally takes my book from the pile and he hands it to me and he's like, here, sign it, make it really good, and I'll make sure she gets it. So I do. And he does. And I didn't just write like, hey, you're awesome, Laura. I was like, her whole thing is make your mess your message. Like, she goes through cancer, she's coming out, she's, all the things. And she could either live that quietly or she could make it her message and empower other people. So I write, Dear Robin, and a whole long thing about like, thank you for being such a role model of making your mess your message. That has inspired me and so many other women to live our full lives. You've always been one of my sheroes. Fondly, Laura. So he chases her after she gets off stage and goes to the car. He actually chases her out to the car and hands her the book through the window and says, you need to read this. She opens it up, looks at the inscription and goes, wow. And then she reads it on the cross-country flight home and then hands it to her, tweets about it to like her 5 million followers, and then hands it to her senior producer and says, book her.
Amazing.
So did I know when I was like helping put those contract notes together that would lead to my friendship with Mitch, which would lead to meeting Scott, which would lead to being on stage, which would lead to Robin Roberts, which would lead to this MC helping me to get in front of her? No. But if you have an abundance mentality and you just go into life with the idea that you're serving others, that's going to keep coming back to you in multitudes.
Amen to that, Laura. That is fantastic. So we have just a few more minutes left. Guys, if you have questions for Laura that you would like answered, please feel free to type them into the chat box. We would love to get your questions for Laura as well. And also, if you are enjoying this, make sure to hit the share button so that your friends can see this and that we can spread the message far and wide on LinkedIn. So we'd love to hear whatever's on your mind. We probably have time for 1 or 2 brief questions, so feel free to type them into the chat box. And I'll just give a shout out to some of the awesome folks here that have tuned in. I see Brian is from Stamford. Hey, Paula is from Paris. Hello. We have Mukesh from India, Nicholas from Ghana, Mark from New Jersey, Gemma in the UK. This is fantastic. We have CA Venu Reddy from Abu Dhabi. We have Sanjeet from Mumbai. We have Bill from Toronto and Celeste from Memphis. We're very glad to have all of you guys. This is wonderful. And so, Laura, we'll just see if any questions come through from folks. People are just saying, "Oh, Laura, you have great energy. I love this." Let's see. Hold on. Laura, you have great energy! $! Yeah, that's right, Linda. We love that.
I only drink coffee on days where I'm actually on stage. So people are always like, how do you not drink coffee? And I'm like, would you like to see me more caffeinated?
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. Well, Laura, our friend from MG100, our friend Bill Carrier, wants to know, what is your favorite example of living a limitless life? What does that mean, Laura Gassner Otting, author of Limitless? We would love to hear your favorite examples.
Oh gosh. So throughout my book, I interview about a dozen people. And some of them changed their career completely. Some of them changed their workplace so that it comported more with, their personal values. Some of them actually looked at their own lives and said, does this matter to me? Does that matter to me? But I think that my favorite example is actually the one that I used to start off the book. And it's my friend Josh Mance, who was a captain in the US Army, and he was leading his troops through Baghdad when he was actually shot and killed, and he flatlined for 15 full minutes there in the green zone until he was actually brought back to life. And so I decided to start my book with that because I was like, everybody's got an excuse about like, well, I can't do this and I can't do that, but I'm like, not a lot of people have died and then gone on to tell the story. So like he's kind of an irrefutable source. And he came back, he threw himself back, he had to learn how to walk again, like he threw himself back into recovery, and then he threw himself back into his army career, the only career he ever wanted or loved or knew. And I tell the story because I know Bill is a veteran also, so I know that this is a story that he would like. And he actually worked so hard that he nearly killed himself again with with Crohn's disease. So he had to leave the army, and he left the army and went to Tesla, and he went into leadership development at Tesla because like the pace was fast and furious. The founder's vision was world domination. It like felt like combat. It felt really familiar to him. And the whole time he was doing that, he was actually getting called to go speak places to talk about trauma, right? The truth of what actually happens to soldiers when they come back from war. So he was doing that during the day, 18-hour days, putting together leadership development programs, and then racing to the airport, running and giving a speech, and then racing back. And he had his foot in two different speedboats, and everybody told him that he was the luckiest guy in the world, that like he had the best life ever. But he didn't feel so lucky because he was doing this work here that everybody was like the outside definition of success, but the work he was doing over here was actually the stuff that comported with his values. It was consonant with who he was, and he wanted to live into those values every day. So he now has quit. He quit Tesla, and he actually he's working on his PhD on trauma, and he's actually created a counseling and management training program where he works with individuals and works with corporations to help them understand what trauma really means so that they can unlock it and really get into people's full potential. So I think he's a fantastic example of living a limitless life because he had to say, forget what everyone else is telling you about how lucky I am and how amazing I am and how everything's perfect, because it doesn't actually mean anything. That life actually sent him into, PTSD and suicidal spirals. And now he's over here and he's blossoming.
Yeah, that is fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Laura. I think we have time for one more question. I like this one from Maria. She wants to know, what is the biggest mistake you feel you made, and how did it shift how you show up now?
Oh, I don't know that we have time for me to talk about all the mistakes that I've made. I think in terms of the speaking that I'm doing now, right? If you want to talk about how to the, the the quickest change that I made that I think gave me the most momentum, because we're talking about how to be an overnight success, is I realized that it wasn't about me. Right. And I talked earlier about how you have to like I learned from Aaron Gargan King, you show a picture of you, but then you write about them, right? Show you, type them. But it was the same thing. My initial speaker reel was all about me. I'm the speaker. It's me on stage. It's me talking. It's me being interviewed. It's me. And what I realized is that the event organizers don't care, right? Like, just insert different speaker here. Like, we're all the same. Like, we have different messages and different energy, but like, we're replaceable. It wasn't until somebody was like, yeah, did you see that person's speaker reel? They have all that B-roll and there's no one, like the seats are half empty. And then I started looking at other speakers' videos, and I realized that if you only have B-roll from certain events and you don't have a huge crowd and that's all you're showing, then as a speaker, I'm thinking the event organizer is looking at me on stage, but really me on stage is like insert speaker here. What they're really looking at is how many people are in the seats. Can this
Laura,
person
did
fill
your
seats?
camera kind of short out for a
Oh,
second?
I don't know.
I don't know. You're black all of a sudden, but we can still hear you though. You can
Okay,
keep going. That's right.
we'll see. We'll keep going.
Yeah.
I think it'll come back on right now. I wonder. I
Oh,
don't know what happened. Oh, there we are. Okay.
hey, hello.
Um, so what I speaking of, right? So what I realized was that it wasn't until I realized that the event organizers didn't care about me, right? It was insert a different speaker here. Like there's a, we're a dime a dozen. What they cared about was who's in the seats and how are they reacting? And is this person filling seats? Are they exciting? Are they attractive? Are they tickets? Because we're money going out the door. They care about the money coming in the door, right? So it wasn't until I understood that we're just, I'm not the product, right? Like it's the event is the product, and how can I make their product better? That changed the way that I showed up.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I see a couple of folks here. Linda and Janet both say they just bought your book. So,
Oh,
wow,
thank you very
very
much.
nice. Excellent. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Laura, thank you for taking the time to be here and to share your insights. Again, everybody, please feel free to click the share button so others on LinkedIn can join in the fun and see this. If you're interested in joining for more LinkedIn lives and seeing what I'm up to on LinkedIn, go to DorieClark.com/LinkedIn. You can subscribe there to my LinkedIn newsletter and follow me there. And of course, be sure to open a new browser window so you can follow Laura on LinkedIn as well. Laura Gassner Otting, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's always good to see your face.
Thanks. Take care, everyone.